Rockin' the Dad Pod is back for another episode. This episode sees the return of Brian and myself talking to you about being dads. We normally are having guests on these shows. That's where our hope and the future of this podcast will be. I know the last episode was just Brian and I, and this episode is actually just going to be just Brian and I as well. But we thought, we'll do a couple episodes like this, and then we'll get back into guests next month and the month after that. But right now we're talking about my wife Taylor and I had a baby, Nova Michael Soderberg, on May 18th. So we're discussing, Brian and I, the experience of being fathers and having the experience of being in the hospital while your wife is in birth or in labor and having the birth of your child. So kick back, relax, enjoy a conversation about the birth of Nova Michael and entering the world, and me actually becoming an actual dad for the first time, and Brian's experiences with his kids as well. I hope you guys enjoy. Please follow us on Facebook, on Instagram at Rocking the Dad Pod. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as the video portion on YouTube. You can hit subscribe on all those places or follow and get the latest podcasts that come out too. So I really appreciate you guys listening to it. Thanks to all the dads out there and all the non-dads out there who still listen and support the podcast. We look forward to this episode. It's a great episode. Nova Michael is born, and you enjoy this episode of Rocking the Dad Pod. Thanks, everybody. How's it going, Brian?
Good. It's going great.
Yeah, it is.
How are you doing? It has.
I've seen you in general. I mean, even between recording before, we see each other like popping in and out. But I guess you saw me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw you. I met the little one.
Yes, quickly.
I drank some of his beer
at the Orono Brewing Company location.
Yes.
That was fun.
Loosely not sponsored by.
Yes, no. I think most people have met him there so far, because like I've had to go in during this like time of paternity / just like taking it easy for a couple of weeks so that I can get back into the swing of things. And I was like, oh, I'll have to go in for a couple of hours. And Taylor's just like, we'll come with you. And then like, we'll just hang out, we'll have lunch or whatever. And hang out. And so like a lot of people have been like, oh, I met Nova for the first time. And it's like, where? Oh, Orono Brewing Company. Also, that makes sense.
He's a spokesman.
Yeah. It's fitting that it would be at Orono Brewing Company. Definitely fitting.
Right. That's his middle name, right? Nova, Orono Brewing.
Yeah. It's actually just Soderberg. Nova OBC. I should have just changed his name. He wasn't even Soderberg. It's like something with an O. Oscar. Brian Chapman. There you go.
I hear that's a good name.
Brian? Nah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's decent.
Hey, before we get into like, baby talk, or we're not going to talk like babies, but like baby talk, you find
that'd be hilarious.
New spot to roast some coffee or no?
Oh man, no, not yet. The man's trying to shut me down. No, I do have some irons in the fire though.
That's good.
I'm working with code enforcement. We'll see. I'm waiting to hear back from them what my next steps are. I don't have like a cease and desist or anything, so
it's just letting you know.
It's just letting me know I have a grumpy neighbor.
Is there some sort of filtration system that's cheap that you could put in there or no?
Cheap? No.
Okay, but there's such thing as a filtration system, just not cheap.
Yes. The ones, I mean, basically it looks like I would have to, it's in the 10 to 12, $13,000 range to get.
And at that point, if you're going to spend that kind of money, you might as well work on getting a place to do it, not at your house, right? I mean,
right. That's kind of, it's sort of one of those deals. If I move into a more commercial area, I could maybe not have to have the filtration system in place at the size that I am. And so it's sort of like, would it'd be better to invest money into that or get something, because the plan is always to outgrow where I'm at now. So this is just a little premature, but.
And they don't even tell you who the angry neighbor is, do they?
Oh no, they do.
They do.
It's impressive. I was surprised.
Wow.
They sent me like a formal letter, and then they send you another attachment that has the complainer's name, address, phone number.
Wow.
I know.
I wonder if this person knew that.
Oh well, this person.
I'm just wondering if someone knows and you do a complaint to the town, whether or not your name didn't know it was anonymous or not.
Yeah, it's not anonymous. I don't know if that's an option or not, but this person is well versed in complaints to the town, so I'm sure he knows that his name was going to be involved.
But you've been roasting coffee for how long now? I mean, you've been roasting coffee for quite a bit now. Like, that they would have a problem with all of a sudden.
Yeah, I've been roasting for at least 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm eating a
That's
sandwich
weird.
if you're just listening
If you're
online.
listening, yeah, that's great. But I told Brian it was absolutely fine because we're just, that's how we do it. See, the thing is, and it's not an excuse because, but parents, now you have to find time to do these things. So you're double dipping here. You're eating lunch and you're
Double
recording a
dipping.
podcast.
That's
So
right.
that's the way we have to do it.
It's a
I'm
delicious
fueling up
sandwich
with coffee. So
yes. So you had a child. How was
I did
that?
have one. I had one. It didn't come out with two. I was really
A
surprised.
second didn't creep out.
I know. It was an experience, man. Like I tell you that much.
It's a trip.
It is, and it's one of those things that when we talked for 3 or 4 podcasts ahead of time, and obviously just in general and in discussions about what we can experience, what we're expecting, kind of with the whole, once you get pregnant, you have these different things that you go through, but you can basically do regular life around those things. But the day it comes, the day that you're like, oh crap, this is actually happening. I don't think you can tell everybody every single detail what could basically happen that day, and no one's prepared for it.
No,
you're not prepared for it. I don't care if you have a planned, C-section. It's all planned out, the time, the date, everything's all done. You still are not prepared for it. You're not. You never get everything done. I mean, it's like, before you go on vacation, you're like, oh, we're going to clean the house. So when we get back, it's going to be nice and clean. And you never get it done. So it's like,
right.
How could you prepare yourself for the day that your wife goes into labor? You can't.
Yeah. We were watching some TV show this past week and they were talking about a birthing plan. I was like, who even needs one of those? Because it's not going to go.
No.
It's not going to go as you plan it. Although you can plan is that there will be a birth that day. Or at some point.
At some point. And so he was born at 37 weeks, 2 days. So it was early, obviously. So we weren't expecting it happening right away. And I thought I had another week. Like I just thought, at least 5 days, a couple more work days to get myself in order at OBC so that I could, Cassie could take over specific duties, a couple things I wanted to go over and just be like, okay, honestly, guys, I'm set up to a point where if tomorrow I don't come in because the baby's born, we're all set. So I Taylor on Tuesday, May 18th, Taylor's water breaks, and she goes, "I think my water just broke," and I'm just like, "Oh!" And that's again, "Oh crap, this is happening." And so she starts getting ready. Obviously, it was like at 7:00 in the morning, so like no doctors open, offices are open, so you have to call the after-hour numbers and wait for the call back and all that stuff. So she's like, "Well, if this is happening, then let's get ready." So she starts to take a shower, and then she's like, okay, well, I'll eat, because that's one thing that she did read on in books is you're not going to have an opportunity to eat, basically. So eat breakfast before you leave, or eat something before you go into the hospital.
Eat before they tell you can't have anything to eat.
Exactly. And so she ate quickly, and I'm throwing things together, but I'm in here in my studio, emailing work, being like, okay, this is what I need to have happen. This is happening. I won't be into work today, and all this stuff. And was able to get everything done. But then we get in the car, we drive to the hospital, we pull up front, and right now with COVID and stuff like that, you can't come in and go and freely. You can once for every 24 hours you can come in and visit. And so I basically was like, here you go at the door. Here you go. I'll go park the car and then come back. And I met her inside, because if I had gone inside the door into the lobby area and then left, basically I wouldn't have been able to come back in, and that would have been very sucky.
That's when you just throw the keys at the guy and say, listen, I got a baby coming, park it.
Is this okay parking the car right here?
Dude, you just got to go in like a bat out of hell, just like the movies.
You're in the middle of the road, dude. No, it's okay. I'll leave it here. I'm having a baby. And you obviously are the kind of mentality as a dad, I'm the only one having this baby right now, and nothing else bad is happening at this hospital. So why is not everybody focusing on us?
Right.
So we finally get in there, and it's so funny because you think, again, you picture the movies and you picture stories from other people, and obviously you don't tell in depth. When I talk to you about having a baby, I'm not like, okay, every second of the day that Jude was born, I want to hear every single detail. We talk about overarching things, and so when we came into the hospital, and they did go into check-in. And I was like, wait, we sit at this table here while she's having contractions, and they just ask you about information.
Right.
Your insurance card on you, and Walgreens is still your pharmacy, and I'm just like, oh my god, she's in labor right now. Like she's having
Well,
a baby.
especially with your first one, you don't like. I remember when, like the first time they told Gretchen to push,
Yeah.
like our doctor wasn't even in the building.
Yes.
She was like
Exactly.
at home, and I'm like, you can't tell her to push. What happens when the baby falls out? Like we're not right, and they're like, yeah, that's like a good hour away,
Yeah. 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 We're good.
and
Yeah.
so, but you just don't know that.
No,
So
and that was the biggest thing for me was like when they finally get us up to the room and all these nurses in there and they're great people at Eastern Maine. Like it was amazing staff and all that stuff. But it's
mhm.
true. It's like when you think about, picturing having a baby, the doctor's there the whole time. It's like, no, the doctor's there for the
No,
important times. The nurses are the one that does everything else.
oh yeah,
So it's
they're
like
the real MVPs.
at
Like
one point. So
it's funny. Like I know you pick your kind of doctor, your
yes,
OB or
yes,
whatever,
yeah,
but me and Gretchen have said a lot that, and when it comes time for the birth, I'd rather pick my
nurse,
nurse,
yeah,
not my nurse, but her nurse,
yeah,
because we had a lady Wendy, which we still stay in contact with, and
yeah,
she was just amazing. And so
yes.
she's there for the whole time, and the doctor just swoops in, saves the day, and then leaves.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, funny that Taylor, the nurse for Taylor was a woman that she actually worked with at the Alfond
Hmm.
on the ticket office area where when Taylor was in college, she worked with this woman and she did, it was just
Oh,
like one
it's
of those
funny.
things. It was like an hour after we were like there, like set up and she was in her gown and stuff like that. And Taylor was like, "You're Alphonse?" So, oh my god, I thought so too, and I just didn't want to say anything. And so it was actually
Yeah,
kind of funny that they actually had worked together for a small time, and
ticket
how
sales to delivering babies.
small world though. Like it's weird. I mean, it's like Eastern Maine's a huge hospital,
Hmm.
but to actually have that happen, that the person that's going to be your nurse for the day,
Yeah.
fascinating. But when they told Taylor to start pushing, in my mind, or again, in my mind, the doctor was going to be there for that, like you just mentioned. And so
Yeah.
when they told Taylor to start pushing, I was just like, okay, they must be just getting her ready to, this is what you're going to do. It's how you're going to do it. And it wasn't until like maybe an hour after she started pushing, because she pushed for like 4 hours, um,
Yeah.
was that I was like, oh, wait, this is actually happening. Like I thought they were just setting her up for it. Brian, I will tell you right now, in the meantime, in that first half an hour span of her pushing every 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it was, I bought a comic book online on my phone because I was like, oh, I was just like searching through Facebook and like, oh, this is kind of cool. Da, 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 da. And then like she's like, push. So I put my phone down and I'd go over and I'd hold her hand and stroke her head and get her going. And they'd be like, okay, that's good. And I'd sit back down. I'd go, oh, this is kind of a cool comic book. And it's like, oh, and I purchased, da, da, da. Okay, push, and da, da, da. And then it was like literally like a half an hour later, I'm like, oh my God, this whole time she was actually doing what she was supposed to be doing to have the baby. I thought she was just getting her ready for the doctor to show up. Okay,
Yeah.
we're doing this. And then from that point on, I'm like, do you need music? You put my phone
Welcome to the
down.
game, Justin. Jeez.
I saw a little sleepy there. Woke up a little late for that one, but I just didn't realize that. I mean, I guess I knew some of it again, but I've never been through the experience. So the first time is always this weird.
Oh yeah.
Everything is new and everything is not just new. Like you've been to the hospital before, but I've never been on that wing before. I've never been in those rooms before. So
Yeah.
the terminology that they're using and the tools they're using and all that stuff, I've never really.
Well, and you've never seen your wife in that state before either,
Mhm.
and likely never. Like that's like this weird time
Yeah.
when things are just not what they ever normally are or ever are. It's just this section of time where it's just totally different than what you normally experience
Yeah.
in an everyday. So it's a trip.
Well, I mean, because also, like, what else in this world do you ever go through with your wife or someone else is going through this situation? They're standing next to them holding their hands. Like, if they were going for a procedure in the hospital, it's not like you'd be standing there holding their hand the entire
Yeah,
time they're having a procedure. Like, oh, you're doing great. You're doing great. It's like, oh, I'm, getting my leg fixed.
he's
Like,
almost got the appendix out.
yes.
Good job. They should do that.
Yes, little support structure. I mean, you have to hear
Yeah.
the whole. I mean, speaking of that, I mean, so we ended up pushing for 4 hours. She pushed for 4 hours, and finally they were just like, this is not happening. He didn't move for the last like 45 minutes any
Oh,
further down. So they finally said we got to call this and we're gonna go for a C-section. And but if they did that for the appendix too, you'd have to wear the whole getup like I wore, the whole like safety suit. They had the whole like
right.
white suit, the like beard net and all that stuff too. But it was funny because they came in and they brought it to me, and I'm like, "Oh, this is cool. I'll put this on." They're, yeah, you put that on before because you're gonna be in there for the C-section, but not the beginning part. Da, da, da. So it's like cool. I was like, I put it on. I stood there, and they're like, "Oh, cool, you're all set." And then like 20 minutes later, they brought us into the room, and I'm like standing here like an idiot, dressed all up in this thing. Like I didn't want to be late. I didn't want to have to be like them waiting for me. But I also
Right.
feel like
Yeah.
I could have waited 5 or 10 minutes before I put it on because I'm just standing there in a hot, like all like
Yeah.
sweaty, like this is annoying. And then they put you in that chair. They put a chair on the around the corner from the C-section to the surgery room. That you stare at a wall and wait for them to call you in because they put everything up and they, get everything ready and sedate her and all that stuff. Um, and so I'm standing there just waiting. Like it felt like 4 hours for them to
Weird.
call me in. And so finally they called me in and hold her hand it's also kind of funny because she's in so much pain. Even with the epidural she was so much pain at the end of that pushing that now they're actually cutting her open and taking things out of her, and she's just having a conversation with me because she's like,
Yeah. It's like,
"Hey,
oh,
I'm
this
just,
is great.
this is great." You can see her moving like this because they're like moving things around, but it's just
Ah.
like you just like having a conversation, like, "Oh, that was crazy, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
the baby's about to be here. Yep.
Remember
What
all
do you want
those
for
hard
dinner?"
parts I was doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want
Oh,
for dinner?
that's great. We didn't have a C-section, so
Yeah.
I can't relate to that whole process, but it sounds pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, it was probably one of the hardest things at the beginning because when they push for she pushed for 4 hours and then they say, oh no, and then because the baby's so low, they say the best and safest way to do this is to put some sort of balloon back in and push and blow the balloon up so it pushes the baby back in so that it's up higher.
Whoa.
So when they do the cut and they pull he's up higher,
Hmm.
they don't have to supposedly, like there is a possibility for them to do that, but like Taylor was like, what else, you know, the whole experience was like, you guys are professionals at this. I'm a
Right.
novice.
Don't ask me.
What do you think that we should do? I'm gonna take your opinion on it. And they did this thing, and that was where she was like the most pain. And I was one of those things that was like, in the future, if we have another child and it has to be C-section again, which most likely will, is can we leave the baby low, and then not use the balloon because she was either that or like she didn't push the epidural button like close enough. She just was in a lot of pain. So it was like one of those things.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't ever want to experience that with my
Oh,
wife again.
that
I
sounds
felt the pain.
crazy.
Yeah. So
I've never heard of that.
yeah, it was not fun. And our doctor, Dr. Rufo said afterwards, she's like, that was almost inhumane for us to do that. We're sorry. They were very like, you should
Yeah.
have figured another way to do it. But
Yikes.
it's not an unusual thing to happen, but it just wasn't
Was it like a
quite
cool balloon like you get at the party store?
no. I was like, well, we can't keep that. I want memories, right? We put it
I
in
want
the
a
baby
balloon
box.
animal afterwards.
And the doctor's over there like, oh my God, I can't believe that guy just delivered the baby. He's making a balloon animal of it.
Here's the puppy for your newborn child.
Exactly. And the funny thing too is one of the stories that I've always told from this day too was the bed in the delivery room is a bed. Like there's the bed for your wife, and so she can give you a baby, and then there's the bed to the side that like a bench that folds out into a bed, and that's cool. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And they're like, don't get used to that because you're moving to the postpartum room after this baby's born.
Yeah.
Where then they have this crappy old reclining chair that does lay flat, but squeaks to all high L and
Huh.
is the most uncomfortable thing in the world. So where you actually
Weird.
are going to spend the night
Yeah.
is the crappy room.
That's
The room that
crazy.
like you hopefully aren't spending the night when your wife's in your
Right.
wife's
Yeah.
sleeping. I mean, if your wife's pushing you, you're over there sleeping. I mean, I was buying a comic book, so maybe people do sleep. I don't know. But yeah, it was just the craziest thing. And so obviously, it wasn't really him that kept me up the first night. It was more like this chair sucked.
Yeah.
So I was like lack
Huh.
of sleep. It was annoying.
So we had Jude and Lucy were both in the old,
Yes.
like maternity floor, and then Lennon was on when they like temporarily moved, so they were on a whole different floor, but they were like brand new rooms. So I remember that one being, it was like a couch that folded down to a bed or something. It was pretty sweet. That was cool. With Jude, it was like a crappy cot.
Yeah.
And then with Lucy, our second, they wouldn't let me spend the night because it was a shared room. Back then they had they had some shared rooms. So there was another girl who was like I think she was like 15 years old, and she had just delivered her baby. She had a C-section. She's in like a lot of pain and stuff like that. And they wouldn't let her mom stay the night either. And
Weird.
like I remember them telling like the mom that she couldn't stay the night, and we were in the room and they were telling me that I couldn't spend the night either. I was like, I mean, I get that you won't let me stay because
Yeah.
of
Yes.
her, kind of thing. I was like, but we do not care. Like, let her mom spend the night. Like, that's crazy. And they
Can I
wouldn't let
sign
her.
a Can I sign a form of some
Yeah.
sort of release that allows someone to stay in the room with that?
Right. It was ridiculous. So her mom like slept in the waiting room or something like
Yeah.
that. I was like, that's just crazy. But I think the second night we had our own room. And I think I might have stayed the second night, but it was
Long time
crazy.
ago.
It was 9 years ago.
Yeah. See, and so everything went smoothly for the day. Like it obviously came up, and he was born at 7:52 p.m. We went to the hospital at 8:30, so it was only a 12-hour, like not only, but like
Yeah.
the whole process happened in the same day, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
He came out 7 pounds 10 ounces, 20 inches long, so he was great size. And um, the only no, the only thing that's changed was different than I think a normal time for us to do this was that he actually ended up getting the exact same blood disorder that Taylor has, which is called hereditary spherocytosis. What that is, or just HS, if anyone wants to abbreviate it. It's a blood disorder, but so like his blood cells are shaped like circles or spheres instead of like the little donut shaped things.
Oh.
And so he was more likely to be jaundiced, and his bilirubin was more likely to be high, and then his hemoglobin was more likely to be low, and they were. And so we ended up spending a week in the hospital. We ended up spending about the first night with him in our room, and then he moved to NICU, but mainly just because they had the better tools to actually use the lights to make the bilirubin
Oh yeah.
down and all that stuff. And they had 24-hour people watching the baby and so on and so forth. So for like 1 or 2 nights, we were in postpartum, and we were able to go visit him anytime we wanted to, but we just had to we went to like feed him and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I will say it sucked to be in the hospital for that long, but there was times where we could say, okay, it's 9 o'clock. We're going to go back to our room after feeding him. Can someone in the NICU feed him at midnight? And
Yeah.
then because we're bottle feeding. And so can we come back at 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning from our room and feed him then? And so it was nice to have that help
Oh
in
yeah.
the hospital. But it did suck. So he was there for a week, and or what, 5 extra days, because normally you're there for 2 days or so. And so
Yeah.
but then we got released. It was funny because there was one night. So when she got released from the postpartum room, we were able to go to NICU and sleep there, and that's where they had that nicer bed in NICU.
Oh
And
yeah.
the problem was that he had gone back and forth from off the light to on the light and got clothed at one point, and so he was very fussy because he got off the light, dressed, and then they said his numbers are rising back up again, so we want to put him under the light again. So we had to take his clothes off again. So he had been already comforted by clothing.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they made him naked again, sleeping with his arms
Jeez.
shaking, and he just did not like. So the perfect bed, but would not sleep all night. So we were up all night doing that. But the following night, they just basically told us, "We're here. There's no reason if you don't want to, if you want to get a good night's sleep." So we ended up leaving the hospital and leaving him in
Oh
the
yeah.
care. The nurses of the hospital were like, "These people are professionals. They deal with
Right.
higher care." Like this again, he's just under lights. It's not like I mean, there was someone
Yeah.
else in there that had been in there for like 18 months, and I'm like, oh god, like this guy, like, Nova was the least of the problems in the NICU.
Right.
And so we went home. We came home and slept one night, and then went back, and we were at the hospital for one more night after that, before we came home. But it was almost nice to have that recharge. They fed him. We
Oh
spent
yeah.
the time at all that stuff. So it did actually help a little bit. Like when you have a baby, it's basically that next night you're feeding in at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And so we were able to get one night where it was like, we slept in our own beds. It sucked because we felt like we were abandoning our child at the
Right.
hospital when
Yeah.
we left. When
But
we came back, it was excited to see him.
yeah.
But I mean, they were awesome. I will tell you right now, I'll give all the credit in the world to Eastern Maine Medical Center and Northern Light, because everybody there was a freaking killer team. And even some of the traveling nurses were awesome. It definitely makes your
Nice.
experience a lot better when the people like when we left, we would not have left the hospital and come home to sleep if the nurse was like, eh.
Right. Yeah.
It
We
was like,
think we've got him.
so when the shift change happened, I think is it 7 o'clock? The shift
Yeah.
change happened, and I was like, let's see the nurse. If we like the nurse, then we'll go home for the night and come back.
Right.
If the nurse is like, then we're staying the night. Or at
She's
least
the
one of us is.
crotchety overnight lady.
Yeah.
Let's stay.
And so the nurse came. It was the same one from the night before. We're like, okay, just to let you know, we're gonna feed him. We're going home. See ya.
You're right.
Good luck.
You're great.
But yeah, so just a little to touch on that HS just one more time. So basically, he's gonna be fine. He just has his hemoglobin levels will drop consistently at a young age. So like right now he's 8 weeks old, and he was it Thursday he had his second blood transfusion. But he'll have those not hopefully, but he'll have them maybe another 8 weeks from now potentially, and then it will hopefully start to expand, that he won't have them, and then he'll only potentially need him when he's sick. So Taylor had him basically once or twice a year from ages like 3 to 13, but that's just basically when she was sick those times, and then she had her spleen out when she was 13. Which made it so she didn't need to have them anymore. But there's
weird.
Up in the air of whether or not we'd actually get his spleen removed at 13, because now basically if Taylor gets sick, it's really bad. Whereas him, if he gets sick, he might need a blood transfusion, but it's not as bad. His spleen is still going to help, protect him. So there's just it's a big learning curve. But again, when you look at him, not that I would have not loved my child any more than I do now if he had some sort of other deformation. But when you look at him, no one would ever know. And so that's one of those things that and he's definitely okay. He's definitely going to be fine. It's just a lot more doctor's appointments than I ever thought I'd do. And luckily the place to get the transfusions in our hematologist is over in Brewer.
It's nearby at least.
Yeah. So at the Lafayette cancer facility. Because they had the oncology, the pediatric oncology there and hematology there. So we're able to go from Orrington to Brewer pretty easily. So that's nice. And it's a nice building, and you don't have to worry about going through the hospital's a big hospital. Like the Lafayette, you're like 134 elevator.
Right.
It's
a
little bit easier and simpler for doing
that's
that.
where that's the office I work in is right next door. So they have a decent cafeteria.
Yeah. And speaking of cafeteria, I was tired of people saying that the food at the hospital sucks. I'm telling you what,
great.
I was actually very impressed with the food at the hospital.
It's good.
And I went down to get food at the cafeteria. I got a couple omelets in the morning because I was there obviously for a week. I thought it was excellent. I think they did a great job. I was very impressed with the person running the omelet, the flat top, because she was taking like 3 or 4 orders back.
Oh yeah,
she had this.
She knows what she's doing. I've eaten so many hot dogs from that cafeteria. It's not even funny. When I used to work in the pharmacy,
it's kind of dangerous, honestly. But we got DoorDash. They let us DoorDash one night, so someone could you just put your hand through the door to grab it from the person, so you wouldn't be leaving the building.
Oh,
and then I think Aunt Taylor's aunt brought us some food at one point. So we were able to mix it up a little bit for the week, but I would have eaten at the cafeteria every night. I don't care.
Oh yeah, go there for date night this coming week.
Well, it's so funny. We talked about it. We're like, the food was actually good enough that we feel like if we're stale on what we want to do for dinner, we're like, let's just go to the hospital.
They get good pizza.
They're open 24 hours. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to go in. Obviously post-COVID, but that was a weird thing. COVID was weird. We wore masks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week while we were there, even while you're sleeping. She actually
even while you sleep.
She was actually required to wear it too while she was in labor.
The
nurses were kind of
humane.
They were and then nurses were kind of if it falls off, we're not going to put it back on.
Right.
But Taylor was and it actually helped because they didn't see my stupid faces I was making when I was pushing.
Right.
It was basically at the end when they were doing the balloon thing when she took it off finally. She's like, I can't do this anymore. But yeah, it's just
you had to sleep with that thing on. That's insane.
Brian, you had to sleep with it on. I kind of went, oh crap, oops, in the middle of the night it fell off. They were not on top of it. They were not when we were in the NICU, it was a little bit more, but because obviously I think it's just more unsafe kids. But in the postpartum rooms, they were they'd walk in and I'd put it back on because had it off when they were out of the room, and they'd walk in and I'd put it back on. And as long as you have a bottle of water or a bag of chips near you,
right?
I was eating. I don't know what you're talking.
I'm forever drinking.
So
what if you just wore one of those helmets with the the beer can things on the sides, so you're just eternally drinking?
Yes. But that was an experience, and that was one of those things that I'll tell. Obviously with him forever, he's one of those the first time he ever saw us, it was half my face.
Yeah.
Yes, because
right.
sight out of the birth canal. But like the first time I met him, it was like half a face. So it was like when we go to the doctor's office now, it's like, oh, you remember me, right?
Did he have a mask on when he came
No,
out?
he did not have a mask on when he came out. He actually was born with one. It was weird.
That's what the vaccine does. It just puts little masks in there.
N95 ones too. High-end
definitely.
Ones. No, it was a hand knit one. Her aunt made a hand knit one, and she swallowed it.
Oh man!
Taylor swallowed it, and
and then he grabbed it. He caught it in the air and then slapped it on beforehand.
But it was an interesting experience, and I tell you what. Now coming home, it's I would not. Like, there's lack of sleep, as you know. It's not too bad. I think he's a well-behaved child, so it's like he cries when he needs food, but like he's never just going buck wild, crazy crying. And
nice,
he tells us when he needs to eat, and he tells us when he has gas and stuff like that. But other than that, he's been sleeping pretty well, and we take shifts obviously. And Taylor goes back to work next week.
Nice.
A week and a half. And so it's been a crazy experience. But again, it's surreal, and I don't think. And it's hard for me. I'm brand new at this. You've obviously done this 3 times. It's surreal to just be like
every time is brand new.
And this kid is ours. Like it belongs to.
Doesn't it feel weird? Like, do you ever just catch yourself thinking, is it legal for me to be in care of a child, like a human being? Like, who trusted me to do this?
Why, the whole analogy I told Taylor on the car the other day, when I adopted a cat in 2017, I adopted a cat for Christmas time. My dad paid for the fees for my Christmas present, like to adopt this cat from it was a Petco, but it was from some sort of humane society in Southern Maine.
Yeah.
Someone from the Humane Society in Bangor came to my house to make sure my house was habitable for a cat.
No, seriously?
Because I lived in a studio apartment in downtown Bangor. I think they were just trying to make sure it was big enough and all that stuff. But someone came to my house to make sure I was.
That's ridiculous.
No one from the hospital knew we even actually had a house to go back to. Like there was no an address somewhere, but there's no proof that I was going back to a house. I wasn't just living in the car. There's no proof that I was able to take care of this child.
That's insane.
Until you don't take care of the child, will anybody come here and take this child away from you?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like until there's proof that there's not. It was just the weirdest thing that there's no like healthcare worker that just comes and goes,
right.
The house is fine. Yep, they had that. I mean, they do check to make sure you have a car seat.
Right. Gotta make sure that's in there.
Holding onto the baby. But other than that, it's not like there's no healthcare or no welfare checkup on this.
Yeah.
The baby leaves the hospital. It's not their responsibility anymore.
You're on your own.
It's the weirdest thing, and how
Yeah, that is wild when you think about it.
When you adopt a child, I think they come visit your house, don't they?
Oh yeah, that's a big deal.
And so like I just laughed because like Taylor's like, well, what are they gonna do if you say your house is not habitable? Like, what are they gonna do? Take the
right. Sorry.
Like, that's a good point. Like they can't say no and then have it be
right.
That would be funny actually. Oh, you're all excited. You bought all that stuff. You can't actually have this child anymore. Sorry. But hey,
someday.
It's been fun, man. I tell you.
You ready for the second one?
No.
How many times have you gotten that question so far?
Well, I got the question when she was pregnant. Like,
right.
So when's number 2? Child? I'm like, well, at least a year from now. I can't do any sooner than that. Like, no, it's fun. I think it's one of those things that I think it will be once we get through a bunch of more stages. Like, it has to be. Or I talked about it. If we did decide to have a second child, it wouldn't be until like year 2, and so like have them a couple years apart. And so I'm liking to see the different stages. I mean, he's already huge. He's already basically 50% bigger than he was when he was born. He weighs 12 pounds now, and he weighed 7. Like basically, we left the hospital with 7.5 pounds. And but like to see him go through the stages and see him coo, and then I'll see him, talk and walk for the first time and all that stuff.
Yeah,
that will be then the time we'll be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of want to go through this again. As of right now, when you have the first 8 weeks, you're like, no one in their right mind at 8 weeks of having a first child is like, I can't wait for number 2.
Oh yeah. Could you imagine if you had twins?
Oh God, no.
That takes a superhuman.
Brian, I give you credit for having a child when you already have one at home. Like that alone, it's like, you know what I mean? Though, like I have one, I have to take care of myself. I have to help my wife with whatever she needs to get done because she just had surgery, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And have a child, and then if I had another one or a dog, like
a dog,
like, that's just like one thing. But the dog being home might have pushed me over the edge. Just a dog at home.
Oh yeah,
dog.
Right.
Like, okay, let me feed the baby. Hold on, let me feed the baby while I'm walking the dog. But
it gets easier.
I bet, and that's the thing.
More
It's like,
fun.
and obviously, you learn with one, what you do with two, and in
Well,
two, you learn what to do
yeah.
with three, and
And
so
with
it's
one, you're like, oh, this is such a delicate
yes, the
thing, and I
hard.
don't want to break it. And then number two, you're like, they bounce back, like
Well,
they
I'm 8
heal,
weeks.
and
I've learned enough when you saying that, and other people saying that. I'm 8 weeks in, and I'm just like throwing them around. Like, yeah, he's
right.
fine. It's not. He's
It's
not gonna do anything.
we're talking yesterday. We had some friends over, and they have their son is, I don't know, a couple months old now at this point, and I was holding him, and everyone's talking like it's so weird when it's not your baby, how like fragile it feels,
Yes.
but when it's your baby, it's more. It made you just spend more time with it, but you just trust yourself more, and so it's just a whole different game. I don't. I'm not like I think a lot of guys aren't, but I'm not like I really want to go hold your baby type of person.
Mm-mm.
But my own kids, I love to hold. It's just different.
It
I do like
is.
to smell babies' heads, though. I'm kind of like Joe Biden in that.
Yes.
That I like to get the good.
Yes.
They smell so good.
They smell like a baby. It's a
It
weird.
really is its own
Yeah.
scent.
Yeah.
And then at
And I
some point, they don't smell that good anymore.
well, I babysat when I was
Shame.
younger. Obviously, like I babysat people. I babysat infants to toddlers to high school or high school students to high school
Grown
like
adults.
yes to like siblings. No, that it wasn't until you have your own child when you're like, I don't mind changing the diaper. Like people always like, oh my god, poopy diaper. I'm like, I don't care.
Oh
Like
yeah.
whatever it is what it is. I'd rather have the baby diaper changed than me holding him smelling like poop. Like let's be
Right.
honest. So like let me go over and change the diaper, and I don't mind feeding him or burping him or holding on to him. If you told me, hey, I need you to hold my son, or hey, I need you to change my son's diaper, I'm like, forget you, man. I'm all
Nope.
set. Like I mean, let's smell someone else's
Yeah.
poop.
No way. It is. It's weird how that works.
Well, you can mind your own. You can smell your own poops, your own farts, and you don't care. I think
Exactly. Your own brew is fine.
it's a extension of that. I feel like my baby's poops, farts, and burps is like okay, you have to smell that, but like it's just
It's
part
all
of
your
life now.
own.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And so it's been fun, and I like I said, I can't wait to I love showing them off too. So it's a
Awesome.
proud moment, right?
We'll
Obviously.
have him on the show soon.
Yeah, and I was gonna we
We'll
fell asleep.
interview him.
I was gonna bring him on and have a little like thing, but he just fell asleep. So
Well, I got a list of
good.
questions to ask him for next
I
time.
know, right? He'll just go.
So.
He does like to grunt a lot. I'll tell you that much. I never realized babies that grunt that much. That's crazy.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness.
So it's
How
been
was the
fun.
how was the first night at home? Is he's sleeping in your room probably?
Yes, he is.
Get a
He has
bassinet.
I got a little the pack and play that has the
Little
bassinet
thing.
part of it in it.
Yeah.
But
How was
yeah,
that first night?
it was every noise you check them.
And
If
then
you
every lack of noise, you're like, is he still
yes,
breathing?
and
Yeah,
8 weeks
he's still
in, you're
breathing.
like, that's a noise. That's just a grunt. Yeah, you're good. It's
Yeah,
like
right.
you don't have to worry about it. And I am even getting used to the bubbles. Like if he like pushes his pacifier out,
Oh
a
yeah.
little bit of slurpy noise that you get out of that is not him. Uh,
Suffocating or something.
it's not him suffocating. It's not him spitting up. It's just the binky,
Yeah.
the pacifier coming out. And so there's those things I'm getting used to now at
Hmm.
8 weeks in. But the first couple of nights where he just and then you're like, am I feeding him enough? Am I those kind of things too?
Right.
Also the lack of information is like, okay, I fed him, I burped him. I should probably hold on to him for 15 minutes at a vertical, like more on my chest than just putting him back down.
Yeah.
Because I spit all up and stuff like that. So there's those things. But the first couple of nights were interesting. Not a lot of sleep at all.
Yeah.
But
I
now we're
found the
getting
first night at home with like the firstborn
yeah.
was like, I feel like that was the most stressful of the whole ordeal,
Mhm.
because it's like, is he awake? Is he sleeping? Is he still breathing? And just feeling like I had to look every 2 seconds, and then after that first night, though, it was like, you kind of like he's alive. It's okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
But
And now 8 weeks in,
weird.
it's not an issue at all. And like honestly, say not this past night, but the night before that, he did a 8 p.m. feeding, and then he fell asleep around 9 and woke up at 3:30.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I was like,
That's pretty
geez,
good.
I want to shift that if I can get him to fall asleep at midnight and sleep till 6:30 in the morning.
Right.
Also, and then like last night was two
That
4.5 hour stretches, and so
nice.
it makes it a lot easier too because it's like one wake up in the middle of the night and then
Yeah.
basically you're up in the morning. So
Yeah.
makes
I
it
remember for a
easier.
while there, we were trying to we're trying to feed Jude. Like we'd put him to bed earlier, like at 6 or something like that, and then try to like get him to wake him up in the night to try to like before we went to bed, wake him up so we could feed him a bunch to try to get him to sleep longer. And like there were nights where we're like we'd take his clothes off and we're like trying to wake him up, and like he just wouldn't. He'd just be like barely awake, and we're just trying to like sprinkle a little water on him, like whatever you got to do to wake up and just eat a bunch so you go back to sleep. And he's like, "Nah, I'm ready. I'm out."
Yeah, exactly. And
Good
that's
times.
But Taylor and I have been able to do a little bit of like back and forth on that. Like if we have to get up at 2:00 in the morning, then obviously this tonight I'll do it, and tomorrow night you'll do it, and we're trying to figure out. We can come up with a routine when she goes back to work. That might be nice. So we work out. So I think it's not crazy. I tell you what, but
Auto feeding helps with that too.
I will say, Brian, though, like at 35 years old, I'm happy that I waited this long to have a child because it's perfect right now. Perfect partner. I love him. He's perfect as well. However, 21-year-old Justin was more likely to be able to stay up all night than 35-year-old Justin.
Right. It hits you different.
I definitely think that you and I could have definitely hung out all night and played video games or music or had a couple beers and been up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. No problem. At 35 years old, you and I are both like we're texting at 10 o'clock because the basketball game's just finishing. And I'm like, we're both probably like, okay, man, if the basketball game wasn't on, I'd be in bed already.
I'd be gone. Yes. So. Oh, I know. Even like the finals right now, I haven't watched a single game because they're on so late. I'm like, nah.
And I want to because the Bucks Suns. I mean, that seems like a fun series to watch. Like, I want to see the Suns play, but like 9 o'clock. I told Asa at OBC the other day. I'm like, I missed the bubble.
So I know.
They played like the championship game was on at like 7 o'clock, and
this is what it should be. I hate that.
I'm like, I don't care about the West Coast. Screw the West Coast.
Right? They should just like. I think they should film all games. All games should be played at noontime. Yes. Wherever they are. Yeah. Noontime, and then they'll show them at like 7 o'clock the local times. Yeah. I don't care if it's live or not, just as long as I don't know the outcome. Yes. And then just play it later.
You sign non-disclosure agreements for different things. Like if you and I were talking about something we're doing for Owner Brewing Company, I could have you sign a non-disclosure agreement. We're contractually obligated not to say anything. Just everybody that's at the game has to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so you don't say anything online until after the game.
Cause those when they do like the West Coast tours, those are so late. Hate it.
And lucky for us as basketball mainly fans is that the Red Sox do 3 games in a row at 10 o'clock at night in Oakland. Whereas basketball, it's usually like, okay, tonight it's at 10 o'clock at night. Tomorrow night it's a 1 o'clock ABC game, and then they're back in Boston the next night. So it's like, okay, we're good. It's it's 1 or 2 games and we're good. But baseball, they do like these like week-long stretches that they're in Oakland and they're in Los Angeles, and it's all 10 o'clock at night games. It's like I couldn't do that, but it's looking forward to next season. We'll talk basketball at some point because a lot of things are happening in Boston.
I feel like. Yeah, we got to do a special Celtics episode, but
what
I'm getting a little
Colin Sexton.
Oh, I don't like him.
I don't know. But he's good.
He's good, but I don't know. I don't personality-wise, I don't know how well he would fit, but I'm feeling like there's a lot of chatter about Brad Beal and
Well, that's one of them, and you know what? With the new coach. He used to be an assistant. He used to be assistant out in San Antonio, and he says there's rumors out there that says that might be the tiebreaker to get some players from San Antonio. It's like a DeJounte Murray to come over to Boston, which would be nice too. So
I'm worried they're going to get rid of Jaylen Brown.
I don't think so. I don't think this year. I think that with the new coach and the team they have, I think they're going to try to build around Tatum and Brown to start.
Yeah.
And if they don't go far into the playoffs this year with some tooling around. That's when they start looking at, okay, maybe this isn't going to work with you.
That makes sense.
Which I don't want them to do what they did in Philadelphia for too long. I don't want Embiid and Simmons for 5 years and realizing that we're working with Embiid and Simmons and then blow it up. Like if you have to trade Brown next year to win a championship in 2022, 2023, whatever it is, then do it, because I'm more worried about getting into the championship than I am Brown himself. But give it a shot. Like let's give Brown and Tatum and some pieces around him a new head coach, a fresh start in the season to see if they can do it. If they can't, then maybe around the trade deadline or next year to move.
I am excited about the new coach. I'm very excited about that changeup. I did like in one of the press conferences where he called out Brad Stevens and said like Celtics were 27th, I think it was, in assists. He's like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like all season long, I'm just screaming like, you guys win the game when you pass the ball.
Yep.
When Jason Tatum just does a little dribble thing and jacks up threes or whatever, that's when you lose.
Or Smart shoots threes.
Oh. I have a hard time. I have a love-hate with that.
Me too. If he could only
Because he makes a ton of them.
If it was football, and Smart could only play a defensive part tool,
right?
I'd want him on every team I ever owned.
Yeah, but he makes more threes than anyone else on the team.
It's because he also takes more threes. But
here's
we'll don't want to go too far into the Celtics. But one of the things I will say is that Smart, when Tatum and Brown and Walker were all on the court at the end of a game, Smart would take too many shots for himself. Where it's like three other people are in front of you on the pecking order.
100%.
Get the ball to Tatum. If Tatum's not open, get it to Brown. If Brown's not open, get it to Walker. If Walker's not open, then get it to them. But if all three of those players aren't open and you're taking a shot, there's other issues going on here. But if all those players are opportunity to get them the ball and you shot up the last second shot for the winning the game, you're thinking about yourself and not the team's winning.
Right.
He did that way too many times. And that was the problem with Brad Stevens is I don't think he ever reprimanded him for it.
Yeah.
He's always just like, oh yeah, it was, whatever. And then they moved on. I'm like, no, Brown or Smart should not be taking that shot at the last 3 minutes of the game.
Ever.
Other players that can play that take that shot.
Yeah.
So, and honestly,
I agree.
Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of having Horford back, but I think he'll be fun to. I think he'll be a good veteran presence in the locker room. Whether he's the all-star that he used to be, whether he lives up to the contract that he has, I think he might have that time where he looks at Brown and Tatum and the rest of the guys and goes, "Hey, quit the crap. Let's play some basketball," kind of thing.
And they, when he was in Boston, they played through him a lot, in like he facilitated things a lot, and I feel like we've missed a little bit of that. So I feel like he could help with the ball movement problem that we've had, but it's kind of a non-exciting thing for me when he came back. I was like,
well, again, if you look at just statistics for basketball or money-wise, it did make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that's strictly the only thing, and it sounds like rumors I heard is that Oklahoma City is ready to move Walker already. Like they're going to flip him again.
Yeah, I saw that too
in Oklahoma City. So,
I feel bad, but
hey, it is what it is.
Hey, it's a game.
I love it. I can't wait. We'll have to do some stuff. I would love to do also. What would kind of fun to do is I was talking to Adam about a main state of mind is watching a movie and doing live commentary. So if anybody wanted to watch it along with us, they could do that. It'd be kind of fun to do that with a Celtics game. Put the Celtics game on, put the recording on, record while we're talking about the actual game playing.
Is that legal? I'm down.
As long as you don't show the basketball game and as long as you don't have the audio from the basketball game. So we would have we'd probably watch the game on mute and just watch the game, and we could talk about things that are going on in the game. Not like, oh, Horford made a shot. It would be more like, oh, Horford, that's the things he should be doing, and so on and so forth. Like that kind of thing. So,
and then we could send that to the coaches, and they could
and say, hey, we should have been the coaches of the team.
Yes.
Oh, Damon Stoudemire, assistant coach too. Yeah.
Yes.
Damon Stoudemire, I love that. Love it.
Good. Okay. I'm excited.
So we got a little while to go, but we're getting there. All right. So, but we'll come back here pretty soon on the Dad Pod, and we'll talk get another guest.
That's right.
Jay Cochran is one of our guests. He's a tattoo artist in Bangor. He's having a baby at the end of this month, so
oh wow,
that'd be kind of cool to get him on to talk about his second child. But also, I want to talk to him about passions. He's a huge Star Wars fan, huge toy collector, and so on. And so you talk about passing your passions on and your culture and all that stuff. I was funny because go ahead.
I was gonna say, and he's just an all-around good guy.
Oh, he is a good dude too. But yes, obviously. But he's my tattoo artist as well. But Taylor and I were laughing because we're watching Black Widow the other night. We watched that.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's excellent, but I'm not gonna spoil anything. But I want to say it's funny to me, being a big Marvel fan, is that Nova's first ever Marvel movie is Black Widow because he was in the room with us. He wasn't watching it. He was in the room with us, so
he was there.
Say that going down back in history. What's the first Marvel movie you ever watched? Well, technically, it was Black Widow.
My eyes were barely working, but
I heard Scarlett Johansson in the background.
Yeah, I have plans in my head to go see Jay at some point in time, but I'm sure he's still backed right up from.
Oh, he's backed up.
COVID. I mean, I know he gets backed up anyways, but then
I think his
remember
books are
COVID.
closed for
Yeah.
most. I wanted to say his books are closed for 2020 into 2022, like
That's crazy.
spring of 2022. I have appointments September, November, January, and March, but basically just a placeholders for me. Like if I might not use them all, but it was like if you don't put a placeholder in and actually put this on the books, I'm never going to be able to.
Right.
But
sounds like you're being a little selfish with Jay's time.
And so then he said to me, he goes, the other benefit is if you tell me I can't use the one in December or in January, then he can actually go in the system and say, okay, anybody, Brian, do you want a tattoo? Or he can say, no, this is a scheduled time off for me. Now I actually have the day off.
There you go.
And have to worry about it. So he goes, honestly, he goes, if I cancel the day before, he's not going to be pissed because he goes, the money's been good. And I have so many appointments that also time with my family is also good.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like,
good place to be.
Yeah. So he's like, I can either take it if we're busy and do another appointment because I guarantee I can say, hey, tomorrow I'm available, or he can take the day off and spend it with his fiance and with, his now it will be 2 kids. So
or you
I think I'm going to auction off mine.
I was gonna say, or you could just transfer it to your friend Brian and co-host.
Yes, you see, that's why I did that. I was like, I have a list of like 10 people that I could literally ping and be like, hey, I'm not gonna use September's appointment. Does anybody want it? And then just text Jay and be like, you can't take the day off because I got your appointment. You know.
Yeah, right.
I want a 10% fund.
I sold it to Brian.
I sold it to Brian for 10% of his tattoo appointment. Sweet. But yeah, so his experience of having a kid was pretty fun, and we'll have him on at some point. And hopefully we'll be doing this dad podcast for long enough that he actually can come on and be a guest, because that'd be kind of fun. It'd be fun to sit down sometime with like Jude and Nova. It'd be fun to just sit down with Jude in the first place. I'd love to have Jude on as a guest, but
he's quite a connoisseur of Marvel and Star Wars and all that stuff. So Fortnite's not cool anymore.
Oh, is it not really?
That.
Oh,
no.
I didn't know that. Crazy.
I know.
But
it's not cool.
Sweet. Well,
all right.
Obviously, you can find us all on Facebook, on Instagram at Rocking the Dad Pod, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, all the things. Listen to us, share us, subscribe. Smash that subscribe button.
That's right. Smash it. Take a hammer and hit it.
Sweet, Brian. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, man.
Peace out. Good seeing you.